Hello and welcome back to my video series about the pandas library in Python. In this video, I'll show you the 5 new changes in pandas you need to know about. These are new changes to the pandas API that have come out since my last pandas video in 2016. I was running pandas 0.18 at the time, and there have been a ton of updates since then. So I recently upgraded to pandas version 0.22 and read the release notes so that I can share all of these changes with you. Now, if you're new to pandas, you should probably just watch my pandas video series instead, and there's a link to that in the description below. And if you want to get a copy of the Jupyter notebook you're seeing on screen, there's also a link to that below. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. As always, we will start by importing pandas as PD. And I'm going to run pd dot _version _ to show that I'm running 0.22, and you can do this if you don't know what version you are running. Okay, change number 1 that you need to know about is that IX has been deprecated, and this happened in version 0.20. Now, what does deprecated mean, just so we all know? Deprecated means that pandas is saying you should stop using this. We officially want you to stop using this function, and in the future we will probably take this function away from you and you will no longer be able to use it. So this is the transition period between when we're telling you we don't want to use it and when we're not allowing you to use it. So that's why you should pay attention to deprecation warnings. All right, so to show you what I mean, let's read the drinks data set into a data frame, and we'll set the index column as country, okay? So it's not too important what is in this data frame or what it means. It's called drinks. There's the country names on the index, and the column names are right here, okay? So in this example, we're going to be accessing this 57 right here. That's just going to be our example. So we're going to access it a number of different ways to show you what IX does and how to get around using it. Okay. So the first way I think of to access 57, if that's the piece of data I want, is to use the .loc accessor, okay? So loc accesses by label. These are labels and these are labels. So if I say drinks.loc, Angola, spirit servings, you can always remember it's row, column. So Angola, spirit servings, it's going to give me that 57, okay? Drinks.loc. iloc accesses by position. So position 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, position 0, 1. So if I say drinks.iloc, meaning integer location, drinks.iloc bracket 4, 1, it says go to this position. Okay? So loc and iloc have, ever since they came out, have been recommended. Okay. IX is what got deprecated, okay? So IX accesses by label or position. You can mix what you use, and IX will figure out what you want. So in this case, and let me just go ahead and run it to show you the deprecation warning, okay? I'm saying I want to access Angola, the label, and 1, the position. So I'm mixing it, and it does work, but it's deprecated, okay? So there may be some circumstances where like you just want to use the label in one case and the position in another, and it's really inconvenient to use both labels or both positions, and you really want to use IX, and they're saying, no, we don't want you to use it. And it's mainly because this is very ambiguous, and I agree with that decision that it should not be recommended. So what are you to do other than just doing loc with labels and iloc with positions? Well, I'm going to show you 2 alternatives, okay, where you can still get the same data and you can use a label and a position mixed together. So I could say drinks.loc and pass it a label. And then I can say drinks.columns1. So I pass the position of the column, and drinks.columns1 will resolve to spirit servings, and thus I can use loc, and that will work. Okay. Another alternative is to use iloc. So with drinks.iloc, again, I want to have a 4-1, or I need to have a 4-1 with iloc. But the way to get that is I can say drinks.index.getloc and pass it my label, and that will result in a 4. So I can say essentially drinks.iloc 4-1. Okay? If you're not following this, if you're not terribly familiar with loc and iloc, that's okay. I've got a video that explains it. You should definitely watch that. If you're following along, I'll give you one more example, and then we'll move along to the next change. So let's say I want to do drinks.ix 4, spirit servings, meaning position 4, label spirit servings. Well, again, I can use loc and iloc instead, and I say drinks.index 4 with spirit servings, or drinks.iloc for drinks.columns.getloc spirit servings. Okay? So you don't have to memorize this. This is just if you really want to do something that IX previously supported, but you don't want to use IX now that it's been deprecated. Okay? If you're super confused, again, I have a video, how do I select multiple rows and columns from a pandas data frame? You should watch that so that you can get a good handle on loc and iloc. Okay, change number 2. And this is new in 0.21, which is that aliases have been added for isnull and notnull. And let me show you an example. So this is a data set of reported UFO sightings, and I'm showing you the head, okay? So first, I want to remind you of a method called isnull, a data frame method. And what isnull does is checks whether each element in the data frame is null. So you can see a bunch of falses, trues, and then a bunch of falses, and that's because these values are all missing. Okay, they're all null. Okay, so that's the isnull method. Not null method is the opposite, and you can see that all the falses have become trues and the trues have become falses. So that checks which values are not missing. Okay, so that's another missing value related function. I still haven't showed you what's new here, but then there's a method called drop_NA, which is for dropping rows with missing values. And you'll see that when I ran drop_NA, I've lost a bunch of rows, like the row 12 doesn't have any missing values, row 19 does, and that's why they are still listed in this data frame. So that's drop_NA. Fill_NA is another missing value function, and it's used for filling missing values. And in this case, I'm going to fill in any missing values with this text that just says unknown. Okay, the point I am driving at is the following. We've got these two methods, isnull and notnull, and these other methods called drop_NA and fill_NA. And you might be saying, well, wait, what's the difference between null and NA? And it turns out they're exactly the same thing. They're referring to the same operation. Just in one case, they're being called nulls. In the other case, they're being called NAs. So what pandas decided to do is create aliases for isnull and notnull called isNA and notNA. This is because ultimately pandas wants to make it easy for you to remember their function names, and so they decided to kind of standardize on the NA naming of functions rather than the null naming of functions, okay? So we've now got UFO.isNA, which does the same thing as isnull, And we've got UFO.NotNA, which is the same as notnull. They are not yet deprecating isnull and notnull. But it is now recommended that you use isNA and notNA instead of the null variants. Okay, they do the exact same thing. That's why they're called aliases. But you can still use both. The NA ones are the recommended ones for going forward. If you're not terribly familiar with missing values and NAs, I've got a video, how do I handle missing values in pandas? Okay, on to number 3. Drop now accepts index and columns keywords, okay? And this is new in 0.21, all right? So, again, let's use this UFO data set just to reset it, okay? Now, the old way, you can still use this. This is not a problem. But the previous way, if I want to drop rows, is you use the drop method. It's a data frame method. And I say UFO.drop. And then if I want to drop rows 0 and 1, I would pass it a list, UFO.drop 0, 1. And then I would say the axis. And I know lots of people don't like axes. I think I remember them just fine, but a lot of people have trouble with them. This is the 0 axis. This is the 1 axis, okay? So if I want to drop rows, I need to say UFO.drop 0, 1, axis equals 0, so that pandas knows I want to drop a row. The alternative is to say axis equals index, which means the same thing, okay? This is the index axis. Either way, it drops rows 0 and 1, okay? Now this is not an in-place operation. I did not say in-place equals true, so that was just temporary. I have not affected the data frame. Okay, everything I've showed you so far about dropping is old stuff. Here's the new way. This is the new thing. If you want to drop rows now, you have the option to just say UFO.drop index equals 0, 1. So instead of 0, 1 axis equals something, you say just UFO.drop index equals 0, 1. And it will do exactly the same thing. So a lot of people think this is easier to remember than thinking about the axis, okay? Now, for dropping columns, I'll just show you that briefly. If you want to drop columns, UFO.drop city state, if I want to drop city and state, and I say axis equals 1 or axis equals columns. That is the old way, okay? And I drop those 2 columns. You can see they're gone. The new way to drop columns is to just say UFO.drop columns equals city, state. And again, this might be easier to remember than city, state, axis equals, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. All right, I've got a video, how do I remove columns from a pandas data frame, if you want to explore this topic in a bit more depth. All right, number 4 is a quick one. It is kind of like the opposite of number 3. Okay, so in number 3, you previously had to do labels, axis to drop things, and now you can just say columns equal or index equals. Rename and reindex are the exact opposite. The way you've always done a rename is to say like UFO.rename columns equal city. I'm just turning them to uppercase, okay? That was how you've always done renaming, okay? It's a data frame method. You say columns equal. And in this case, they've added the reverse. So UFO.rename, and you specify what's called the mapper. I want to say I want lowercase city to be uppercase city, which I did here, and lowercase state to be uppercase state, and axis equals columns. Okay, so it does exactly the same thing. So if you got lost just now, the point is Rename and reindex, for that matter, have always used this format of columns equal or index equals, okay? And pandas added this whole different way of mapper and axis. That's the exact reverse of what we saw with drop. And the reason for doing all this is because a lot of times it was hard to remember which format which works with drop versus which format works with rename and reindex. Now, both ways of doing things work with rename, reindex, and drop. Okay? One kind of bonus tip for you that I didn't know till I was researching this is that this mapper, it's called a mapper, this where I said lowercase city to uppercase, mapper can actually be a function. So if I want all the columns to be uppercase, I can just say ufo.rename stir.upper and axis equals columns, okay? And that will make this entirely uppercase. Okay. As always, I have a video about this topic if you're not terribly familiar with it. It's called How Do I Rename Columns in a Pandas Data Frame? Finally, change number 5, also new in 0.21. Ordered categories must be specified independent of the data. This one's a little bit tricky. All right, so I'm going to create an example data frame called df. I'm going to pass in a dictionary with ID and quality as the column names. And it doesn't matter what this means, but I've got an ID 100 through 103 and quality good, very good, good, excellent. Okay, let's say by default, this is going to be an object column. Okay, let's say I want to change this to a category column. And if you're not familiar with categories, that's a data type that is super useful if you have a small number of unique text values in a column, I should say string values in a column. Using the category data type can make your data frame smaller, and it can make operations run faster. Another benefit of the category data type is that you can create ordered categories. And that has some nice benefits, like you can sort in logical order versus like alphabetical order. It's super cool. So here's the old way that's been deprecated if I want to create an ordered category for this column. Okay? If I said df.quality.asType, now asType you can still use, and I say asType category, if I want to create an ordered category, I do two things. Ordered equals true, and then I specify the categories in their logical order. Good, very good, and excellent. So from lowest to highest, okay? So that's the old way. That has been deprecated. It does work, but again, deprecated means they're telling you not to do it this way anymore. Now, check out that it did work. Now, I didn't overwrite the existing quality category, but I just want to show you that the D type is category and that it's an ordered category, and Pandas shows you good is less than very good, which is less than excellent. Okay, so those are the three categories. Okay, that's the old way to create an ordered category. Here is the new way. Okay, it's a little tricky. You say from pandas.api.types import categorical D type. So you have to import a new D type. Okay, then you create an instance of that D type. And with that D type, you specify, here are my categories, and and I do want them ordered, and you store it, and you can name it whatever. I'm calling it quality cat, okay? And then finally, if you want to overwrite the quality column, if you want to change it to a category data type that is ordered, you say df.quality.asType, and then you pass in the categorical D type, okay? So let's do that. I'll run that. And you can see that I have indeed successfully converted it to category data type, and it is ordered, and there's no deprecation warning. And as I mentioned, you're essentially specifying categories independent of the data. You specify it first, and then you use that to change the type of a series. And as always, if you're not familiar with categories, you should watch my video, How Do I Make My Pandas Data Frame Smaller and Faster? And that will get you up to speed on why you should use categories. That is it for today. If you enjoyed this video, you should definitely watch my other new video, 4 new time-saving tricks in Pandas. These are new Pandas features that the Pandas team has released in the last 18 months. Please click subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and I hope to see you again soon.